Hey, welcome everyone. In this video, I'm explaining what is a CPU clock speed. If you want to see the written version of this video, you can find a link to my website in the video description. Now, it's important to note that CPU clock speed is very important to determining how the speed of a processor might perform. But it's not the most important. There's many other factors that have come into play. It's just that you'll see something like when you're buying a laptop, desktop, or a processor, maybe you're building a computer, you might see this commonly, like 3 gigahertz, 2.4 gigahertz, some sort of number with gigahertz next to it. This is the most marketed spec for a processing power. However, there's a lot more things that are important. I'll give you an example. If 10 years ago you saw 3 gigahertz, why are we still seeing this now? Why don't we see 15 gigahertz or 20 gigahertz? Because there's other things in play. I'm going to cover those items, so hopefully by the end of this video, you'll know how to approach buying a new computer or processor for your desktop that you're building perhaps. And my personal recommendation on how to approach that, which I also do myself. In fact, you might even see that a processor from today is 3 gigahertz and one from last year is 2.4 gigahertz, which is a slower clock speed. However, the 2.4 gigahertz can perform faster than this. And that's what I'm going to also explain throughout the rest of this video. Okay, so what is a clock speed itself? Well, clock speed determines how fast a processor can execute instructions per a second. How many instructions per second? So the first two you'll almost never see, but I want to put it there for illustration purposes. If you ever see 1 hertz, which again you'll never see, that's 1 instruction cycle per a second. Not very good at all. 25 years ago, something like that, when my family got our first computer, it was a long time ago, I'm getting old, it was 400 megahertz. That's 400 million instruction cycles per a second. Sounds like a lot. It's not. Back then it was, of course. Closer to today's standards, which again you might see something like 2.4 gigahertz, which we'll use as a number for the rest of this video, that'll be equal to 2.4 billion cycles per a second, which is absolutely nuts. So what we can determine from this is that the higher the clock speed, the more instructions you can complete per a second, which is a very important factor determining the speed of a processor, but not the only thing as I mentioned earlier, so let's continue on. So now that you know the numerical value of a clock speed, well, you have to understand, well, what is a clock cycle? What is it actually measuring? What is the actual clock cycle measuring per second? Well, it's basically this. This is what I explained in the other previous video, CPUs explained, but I'll give a quick and dirty explanation here. What a processor is doing at a very high level, this is the fundamental principle here, is that the processor needs to understand what it's doing, what it's going to think and do for you and the user. Well, it's going to fetch instructions from the memory, which is the RAM. Then it's going to decode it, so it's going to translate it into a form of coding language that the processor can understand what to do with it. And after understanding what the code is supposed to do, it'll actually do that. So for example, if you click your mouse or you touch the screen on your smartphone, it's going to register all of that and then execute it and click the mouse or register your touch on the touch screen. And if you ever see me looking that way out into the abyss, looking kind of bizarre, I'm actually looking at my notes. So a single clock cycle is a pulse being sent to the CPU, the processor, to then execute these set of instructions and commands. It's the time unit in which the CPU carries out the task. Now each cycle, this thing here, allows the processor to carry out each set of instructions. Now, how fast it'll complete each set of instructions per a cycle can take multiple cycles. It depends on the efficiency of the CPU. How is the architecture of the processor? How is the architecture or code rather of the software that it's trying to execute or the operating system itself? But this is what's being measured as part of the clock speed, which we just talked about earlier. Pipelining is another principle that you don't have to know too much. It's basically kind of a standard with a lot of modern processors, but I'm explaining it anyway. And I explained this more, again, in detail in the previous explanation video of CPUs, so I'm not going to get into too deep here. Basically, pre-pipelining, like you're talking many decades ago, what would happen is these instructions would be carried out one at a time. So the processor would fetch the instructions, and these two are waiting, then it would decode them. While it's decoding it, it would not fetch the next set of instructions. This is sitting here chilling out. Then, when it's handed off to execute it, these two are not doing anything. With pipelining, it's trying to be more efficient. It's trying to have all these things working at non-stop. So when you boot up your computer, for example, it's going to fetch this first set of instructions, hand it off to be decoded. While it's decoding, the CPU is like, hey, I'm not doing anything. Let me go fetch another set of instructions. And when this decoded stuff is being sent over here, it's going to execute it. But while it's executing, the second fetched instructions is being sent to be decoded. And while these two are now working on task number 2 and 1, because it's still executing the first set of instructions, it's like, hey, I'm going to go fetch my third round of instructions on what to do. Basically, all these parts of the cycle are continuously working non-stop. Pipelining basically lets multiple sets of instructions be worked on at the same time. Again, pretty standard stuff for today's architecture of processor design, but good to know. Okay, so the next concept is boost technology. This is another more modern type of architecture, I guess you can say, in the last few years. So we have two main manufacturers that we're looking at just for this specific example. We have Intel and AMD, which utilize boost technology, but each one have their own kind of name, then I guess patent technology on how it operates, but that's besides the point. We're looking at boost technology. So Intel calls it turbo boost and AMD calls it precision boost, but the idea and concept is relatively the same for either manufacturer of chipsets. What basically happens is that when your processor is doing light workload, so maybe you're just browsing the web on your web browser, it's not really doing much. It's sitting within a comfortable realm within the clock speed allocated for your processor. But let's say all of a sudden you're exporting or converting video in Adobe Premiere Pro or Encoder or whatever. All of a sudden the CPU is like, holy cow, I got a lot of work to do. I need to ramp up my speed. By doing that, it's going to activate boost technology. This happens automatically, these two things. Not much for the user to do. What happens in the background is that it's drawing in more power, more watts to the processor to ramp up and work faster and smarter, if you will. But it also draws in more heat. And of course, to avoid any damage to the processor itself, this boosting technology scales. So when it gets too hot, it'll scale back down and put less power of watts on the processor, so it generates less heat and allows it to stay cooler. Hey, so sorry to disturb you, but a quick word from, well, me. So if you are enjoying the content so far, I'm happy you are. Maybe consider subscribing to my channel. It literally helps my channel grow. Not only that, YouTube is not something I do as a full-time commitment. It's something I have to do on weekday after hours in the late evenings and on weekends. Some of the technology lesson videos that I create on my channel, it's me spending time invested to create those lectures and make sure the best information is provided to you. So maybe consider hitting the super thanks button. It really helps me out in funding this channel and some of the content I continue providing to you. So with that said, let's continue on with what you were watching. The next concept is very similar to boost technology. It's overclocking. Whereas boost technology is automatic. It's done by the manufacturer. It's encouraged by them highly and they kind of do it for you. There's not much for you to do as an end user. Overclocking is something you have to do manually. You have to specifically go out of your way to do it. It's the same idea. You're basically manually ramping up the performance of the processor. So if you have a clock speed that's advertised as 2.4 gigahertz and you're like, you know what? I want to ramp it up to 2.8. I'm just making up a number. Well, you have to do some stuff to it. This has to be, of course, compatible with the motherboard and the processor itself. You're drawing in more power, so more watts to the processor to achieve this. You're generating more heat. And of course, to dissipate a lot of heat, you might have to buy third-party parts. Better cooling, monitoring. You have to make sure you have a software that can monitor the performance. You might have to have it on a dashboard or something on your screen. Some people do, some people don't. So exercise caution if you do want to go this route, okay? Because it's something you're doing manually. You don't have to, but you can do this to make your processor go faster. On the opposite spectrum, you have something called thermal throttling. This actually does the opposite. It will slow down your processor, but it is important. Why would you want to ever do that? If you ever have a situation where your processor is it's overheating. It's simply overheating. It's just getting too hot. What it'll do is the processor, whatever monitoring tool is built into your motherboard or processor, it'll say, hey, I'm overheating. This is dangerous for the processor. One or two things could happen. One is that the computer just shut down, simply, and you might boot back up and your BIOS might give you an error saying, hey, your computer shut down because it overheated. I've seen that. Other times it might not just shut down, it might just reduce the power consumption to the processor itself and other parts of your computer that's connected to the motherboard, to reduce the overheating. That's to prevent damage at the end of the day to the processor and sometimes other parts of your computer, like say your graphic card, for example. It reduces the CPU performance, but for good reason, but this does determine sometimes why a processor might slow down and the speed itself. The second most marketed item, in my opinion, is the number of cores a processor has. So one core means you have one physical core on the processor. And I'm not gonna get into a deep explanation here. Honestly, this is a whole separate video on its own, because it's such a huge topic and a popular one at that too. Then you have multi-core processors like dual core, which is 2. I don't even know if you can find that anywhere. You have quad core, which is 4, octa-core, which is 8, and then you have 12 and so on and so forth. These are the number of physical cores on the processor itself. So if you have one core, it's one core doing all the work and it's switching between tasks to handle the operating system and maybe your web browsing simultaneously back and forth. It's going between them really fast where you wouldn't even notice it. But if you have multi-core, let's say you have quad-core processor is able to handle multiple tasks at the same time. It's much more efficient. That doesn't mean your processor is going to be 4 times faster than this one. There's other elements that play here, which we're talking about throughout this video. But it does allow more efficiency for one processor to maybe work on your handling operating system, another to handle your web browsing, another to work on your Adobe Premiere Pro if you're working on it, for example. Threads is virtual cores. So these are physical. Threads is virtual. So if you have 2 threads per core, it's able to distribute a single core to do 2 different things. So this, of course, 4 times 2 threads, you have 8 virtual cores working. So it's able to handle 8 different tasks at the same time. And then here is 16, and you get the idea. Again, covered in a different video, but the point is multitasking is more efficient with more cores and more threads. Another concept is the architecture design of the processor itself. This is a whole separate video on its own. In fact, these 3 things here could probably be separate videos individually, depending on how I conduct my research and draft my paper. But basically, one of the most common ones you might have heard of is x86, very common. Another one is ARM, which does fairly well in some situations, sometimes it won't. Another one is RISC, which I believe is based on open source hardware design. So the architecture of the processor itself can be a big determining factor, along with the operating system. Is it compatible with one of these elements? There's many more architectures, but is it very compatible with them? Is the software compatible with them? That'll output various outcomes for you and how you're utilizing the computer itself. Our next concept is branch prediction. This is something that you don't really look for when looking at specs of a processor. It's just kind of understood. It's kind of like in the background. Don't worry about this, but this is more for your reference and knowledge. What's basically happening is that the processor tries to predict the next set of instructions that might happen based on if yes or no commands and statements. So to make it very simplified, this is a very quick example. Let's say you're downloading a bunch of media files from Google Drive. Maybe you're editing a video and you're downloading files. Every time you download a file, your antivirus is going to scan the file on the fly. So every time you're downloading a file, well, the processor is like, hey, I'm constantly sending instructions and receiving it from the antivirus software. I'm going to now proactively capture some of those instructions because I'm guessing that it's going to activate the antivirus software again, and I'll be ready, and the antivirus will scan super fast because I've had those instructions stored, ready to go. It's predicting the next set of logical code that might occur. And if it happens, it does it rapidly. If the answer is no, if it's like, no, hey, antivirus didn't activate, I guess I was wrong, it's going to discard those instructions and be like, okay, I'm going to go fetch the next set of instructions. This is very important, okay? I'm going to make a separate video for this, and I explained this in the previous video, but here's a very quick explanation. Basically, the fetch, decode, and all that cycle we explained earlier, the fetch is fetching instructions from the RAM, the memory. It's a different hardware component on a computer, smartphone, whatever. It does it very fast, but to make things even faster, a lot of processor manufacturers have decided, well, why don't we have an onboard memory for the processor itself? So instead of constantly going to the RAM, why don't we just have it on the processor? So you have different layers of cache. I'm not going to get into details about it. You have L1, L2, L3 cache. Basically, L1, for example, is tiny bits of storage space on the processor itself. So instead of fetching instructions from the RAM, which is a different hardware component, it'll just get it from its own memory, which is far more faster to complete certain instructions. So more modern and more efficient architecture of processor designs have more cache storage for faster memory access and just perform better in general. So this is one big thing I'm going to make a separate video for, but very important. So how do you determine which is the best processor for you when you're shopping around or someone's asking you for advice? If you're watching these videos and you're like, hey, I think I can help you. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. You can't just look at specs and be like, yeah, this is the one for you. You're going to do video editing? Okay, this is going to be good for you at your budget for the next 5 to 10 years. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately, for 2 main reasons. First is that you don't know what software is going to be like in the future. Right? If you're trying to edit videos, you don't know what the software optimization is going to be like, what are the necessities going to change. You can't predict the future, unfortunately. The other problem is that if you just take Intel alone, AMD is a big culprit of this as well. Every year, Intel releases too many processors per year just for laptops alone and another giant set for desktops. Working in the IT industry and a tech enthusiast, even I couldn't do this. Some of the best tech YouTubers in the world, even they can't do it. So what do? You do not look at the manufacturer's information. Intel, AMD, even Apple, because they design their own processors for their own Macs and tablets and whatever, they're going to give you the best results possible in very specific conditions in labs. The best like ventilated area, most cooled environment, under the best circumstance possible. I would not take manufacturer's word for mouth. Like, I'd just be very cautionary. So what do? I'm gonna recommend some other YouTube channels. I'm not affiliated with them. I've never met them. I just think that it's important that I share information openly and that you get the best information possible. That's all I'm about, helping consumers and knowledge. And these folks are pretty brutally honest. If something's gonna perform bad, they'll say it's bad. Avoid it. If something's good, they'll say it's good. So that's the most honest thing, is that, well, they're honest, as I just said. Hardware Canucks, great YouTube channel, fellow Canadians. So Hardware Canucks is one. Gamers Nexus, excellent. Paul's Hardware is another good one. Jay's 2 Cents is an excellent channel. These folks, what they'll do is actual benchmarking. They'll run processes through video games, video editing programs. Like, they'll give you real life examples and compare it to other processes from different manufacturers over different generations. You can get a more concise information as to which process might work for you. So you have to research, but honestly, those folks are so good at it, they do all the work for you. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, be sure to subscribe and maybe consider hitting the notification bell icon to get alerted when I make new videos like this, because I'll be making them like all the time coming up. Subscribing also literally helps my channel grow. And yeah, be sure to like the video if you liked it. If there's something you want me to prioritize or one of the concepts when I make another video, leave a comment. I'll try to prioritize that over the others. And that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching.